Hi friends, it's Valerie. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I would love if you would hit that subscribe button and join my YouTube family. Today's video is going to be all about copycat recipes, and it is part of a collab, and I am so excited to be co-hosting this with my friend Adrianne from What My Kids Won't Eat, and I will make sure to have a link to her channel in my description box down below, as well as a link to the playlist so you can go check out all the other lovely ladies videos and see what they have to make for you. I'm going to be doing breakfast items that are going to be Taco Bell's breakfast Crunchwrap, and then Panera's 4-cheese souffle. That is super good. I love that it's kind of like a fancier type breakfast. You can make this for a brunch. And especially with Mother's Day coming up, you can make something like this. It's super simple. It's very few ingredients, but it comes out so nice and delicious. So let's just get started. This first copycat recipe is going to be a Taco Bell breakfast crunch wrap. I'm going to be doubling the written recipe that I found, but I am taking 6 eggs and I've placed them in a bowl, and I'm going to kind of let those come to room temperature while I work on my other things. You're basically going to need 2 pieces of bacon for every crunch wrap that you're going to be making. I just kind of had this amount of bacon, so that's what I'm cooking up. If I'm left with leftovers, I'll just go ahead and use that another day. And I'm putting this in the oven at 400 degrees, and you're going to put that 15 to 20 minutes depending on the thickness of the bacon. Now you're going to need hash browns or frozen hash browns, whichever your choice is. You can use fresh, of course. I'm using these Kroger seasoned ones. I really like these ones. And I'm choosing to do them in the air fryer. You could fry them, make them in the oven, whatever your choice is, but you're going to need 1 per crunch wrap. And I am just placing those on my air fryer tray with a little bit of oil. And I'm going to go ahead and air fry them at 400 degrees for actually 10 to 12 minutes, but I flip them at 5 to 6 minutes. Now I'm just going to go ahead and season my eggs with some salt and pepper. I'm kind of just not measuring, just doing this kind of like to taste for how much salt and pepper I typically use for that amount of eggs. And then I'm just going to go ahead and whisk those all together. And I am using a whisk versus a fork because I do feel like it does make them fluffier. And I whisk those until they become a nice like pale yellow color. Now I've went ahead and heat my skillet over a medium heat, and the recipe calls for nonstick spray, but I don't really use nonstick spray, and I just always use butter with my eggs, so I add a little bit of butter in there, and once that melted, I just went ahead and poured my eggs in, and I just use a rubber spatula. That's my favorite thing to use for my eggs, and I kind of just pull it in from the outside edges, and I pull it in and kind of like push the yolks over to keep cooking, and yeah, just keep doing that until your eggs have cooked most of the way. You don't want them all the way done. You're going to let them like cook off with the residual heat. Plus they are going to get heated when we put them in the tortilla later. And I am breaking those up a bit so it's easier to divide later when I'm making the crunch wraps. Here is our nice crispy bacon, and you're going to need some burrito sized tortillas. Here are those hash browns out of the air fryer, nice and golden brown. You're also going to need some cheese. I'm using extra sharp cheddar cheese, and you're just going to warm your tortillas just a little till they're pliable, and I've placed them all just here, and I'm going to place 1 hash brown right in the middle. I divided my egg mixture like into how many I was going to be using, and I just placed that egg on top. I'm using this Taco Bell creamy chipotle sauce, and I'm just drizzling that over the top. It adds a nice flavor without being too hot. I'm going to add the cheese. I didn't really measure that part. And then 2 strips of bacon. I just broke them in half and use both strips. I was gonna do 1.5, but 2 worked out better, and it actually worked out better for me to do the bacon then the cheese for the next ones, because it kind of like melted the cheese to hold the tortilla better. So I sprayed my pan with a little bit of oil, and it's on medium high heat, and I just placed that down seam side first. Once it got a little bit golden, I just flipped it on over, let the other side get golden. I cut it open here for you. These were pretty tasty. We actually had these for dinner even though they're a breakfast, so that's the great thing about copycat recipes, is you can have them whenever you want. And I served that with this mild taco sauce because that really made a big difference. It really gave that nice Taco Bell flavor that I love. These were definitely a fun and easy, yummy hit with us. This last copycat recipe that I have for you is Panera's 4-cheese souffle. First, I pulled out my 4 eggs and I'm letting them come to room temperature. And you're also going to need a sheet of this puff pastry. I pulled that out so it can become a little bit more pliable. Now to my pan, I've stuck 2 tablespoons of butter and let that melt, and then I added in 2 tablespoons of flour, and I'm just going to whisk that continuously together for 30 seconds. And then we're going to need 1 cup of milk, and I kind of just add that in parts. It doesn't say to do that in the recipe, but I always find that that works best for me when making like kind of like a roux like this. So I add a little bit in at a time and let that thicken. Now the recipe calls for mixing in 1/4 teaspoon salt and 1/8 teaspoon black pepper, and I just went ahead and mixed that in, and you're going to take it off the heat and let it cool. Now I'm just cutting that pastry sheet in half because we're going to be making into 6 equal squares. So just cut it in half first, and then I did thirds on each half of that. You're going to need 6 ramekins. I actually only have 4, so I'll show you what I did for that in a moment. But first, I'm kind of just stretching out those puff pastry sheets, and I'm just kind of making them a little bit wider, flattened out a bit so that they can fit into the bottom and come up the sides a bit. You're going to want to press that into the bottom of your ramekin and up the side a little bit. So I'm just going to repeat that process, and when I was done with my 4, I was trying to think what I was going to use for the other 2. I didn't really think I had anything, but I had these small like Pyrex, like just glass safe like food storage containers, and they were a little bit bigger than my ramekins are. I believe my ramekins are 4-inch ramekins, and the recipe actually called for 5-inch ramekins, I believe. But yeah, I just used these and they worked perfectly. So if that's all you have, it definitely works. And I just had to stretch it out a little bit more for those to cover the surface, because I want to not have the egg just, want it to fit in that puff pastry. So just pressing those again down there. And then we are going to go ahead and just place those on a baking sheet. This is going to help, put it in the oven easier and all together, as well as mess free if there's any spills. Now back to the eggs. I'm just whisking those together. I'm adding a little extra salt and pepper that the recipe didn't call for into the eggs, and then I just gave that a quick little mix to incorporate that. And then you're going to need cottage cheese. You're going to need 1/2 cup of cottage cheese. I actually did notice till editing this that I only used 1/4 cup, and it came out perfectly fine still. So if that's all you have, it works. I actually think it might have been a little extra moist, but I'm still going to try it next time with the whole 1/2 cup because these were amazing. Now I'm adding in 2.5 tablespoons of shredded Parmesan cheese. Then it calls for manchego or Havarti, and I couldn't find that like grated or to where I could grate at Walmart. So I just grabbed these slices and I'm just cutting those up basically into some fine little shredded pieces, and that worked perfectly great. I also realized I didn't have any Monterey Jack cheese like I thought. Of course, you could substitute any of these cheeses to your preference, of course, but I ended up just using all the Havarti that I had just cut up, which worked out because I cut up more than the 1/3 cup that was needed. I was a little bit short, so I had a little bit of mozzarella that I just added a little bit of that in. And I just am mixing that all together to get those cheeses nice and mixed together. And then you're going to go ahead and take that like flour butter roux mixture that you went ahead and made and just add that into your egg mixture and just mix that all together. And I went ahead and preheated my oven to 425 degrees. Now I'm just going to go ahead and spoon my egg mixture into the puff pastry. And I'm just using this spoon to like kind of do even like measurements like into each one. And I just divided that maybe a little extra into those bigger ones. And now I'm just taking those corners from the puff pastry and kind of just folding them over the egg mixture. This is just to give a little bit of that appearance that Panera has with the pastry, like kind of tucking in like that. It wasn't perfect, but it still worked out. In the end, you couldn't see it that great. And we're going to go ahead and bake these for 25 to 30 minutes until they're puffed up and golden brown. And here is what they look like out of the oven, still nice and puffed up. They could have used probably getting a little bit extra golden on top, but I was also worried about the puff pastry getting too dark because I could see it through those clear little Pyrex dishes. Here's a quick little peek at what they look like when they deflate. You can see a little bit more of that puff pastry then. And this next part, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to leave the actual audio so you can hear how crunchy they are. Okay, maybe not the best footage ever, me trying to hold the camera with one hand and show you guys and cut it with the other hand and the fork. It was a little bit of a struggle, but you get the point there. There's the inside of that, and these were absolutely delicious. I really enjoyed these. That cheese flavor is really good. When you get those little baked pieces of cheese, they're extra flavorful and delicious. You pair that with that crispy puff pastry, and it's just a really nice version of like mini quiches, and I love quiche, so if you like something like that, this would be amazing for you. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to go check out that playlist with all the other lovely ladies, and I hope you all are having an amazing week.